Thank you for joining Anne's Art Desk. These videos are brought to you by the City of Palo Alto and the Palo Alto Art Center Foundation. Last quarter, we did a unit on nature stories. I decided to do a set of 4 classes about nature stories and how to build a nature story, how to find one, how to combine your sources, how to draft and redraft and letter things, and I'd letter your drawings. So this is an extremely rough draft, but it has a lot of, spontaneity, good observation, decent composition. I'd probably redraft it and re-letter it before I sent it off somewhere to see if somebody wanted to publish it, because it's not illustration ready. But I just thought I'd share that with you. If you weren't in spring drawing, this is about how bumblebees steal nectar from these flowers and hummingbirds play fair. They pollinate the flower before drinking the nectar. So it's something I saw in my garden and something I decided I wanted to illustrate. So I made a bunch of observations. I looked at a bunch of sources online and in my bird book and in my bug books, and then I drew this drawing. And I actually used a piece of the plant to do the plant part. But I didn't do any field sketching for this guy or this one. But I did use photographic sources. I think I used this to see how the hummingbird interacts with the flower. You can see that it's getting a pollen load right here. And then how the bee interacts with the flower. And you can see it's sort of giving it a hug and drinking out the side. So no pollen exchange is done. So that's what I drew for the sort of the inspiration for this set of 4. And then I just got asked to run an art lesson for 3rd graders on how to field sketch and then how to make a drawing out of a field sketch. So I thought I'd share that with you because I thought it was really sweet. This is a final draft. Let me show you what I drew, and then I'll take you through the reasoning behind making the final one. So we used some photographic supplies, and we actually observed this behavior in the field where these 2 birds were fighting, and they would flare up their feathers and they'd kind of kick fight at each other the way cats do. And they were fighting over nesting materials. The rookery we visited also has these beautiful night-crowned herons. And we were just there yesterday, and we noticed that they have these long, beautiful, 2 long plumes off the back of their heads. So they're kind of quieter, so I didn't make them a big part of my drawing. This is a sketch I actually did in the field of one of the trees they're nesting in. They're nesting in sycamore trees. And it's these birds, this is a Google building right here. So this is a median in front of a Google building where this rookery has established itself. It's quite incredible if you want to go out there and look. I can post the address online. You can go find it.
Yeah. I was there about 3 days ago. It's fantastic.
It's fabulous. So all these birds are in these trees. They're flying down to the ground. They're picking up sticks and carrying them up there. What's really cute is the person carrying the sticks stops right here and hands it over. And then together they work it into the nest. It's a very cooperative endeavor. You don't need binoculars, but if you go out there, you will love having the binoculars because they're super cool to just sit there and watch. It's like TV. And they make these fabulous sounds. So there was this constant chip, 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 chip all the time. And then they also make these sort of waka, waka, la, 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 wah, wah, wah sounds. Sorry, that was a weird thing to say, but yes, that is what was going on out there. So then sort of the meat of my field observations were these really fun drawings of the birds themselves. And I just sat there and did a bunch of sketches. So here's one dropping down, here's one standing on the ground, here's one with a stick carrying it up. And then that's today's exercises. So then you can actually see the elements of these drawings all combined into this final draft. So they all end up here. So they all end up right here. So this one flying up, I inverted here, and there actually wasn't room in the picture for it, but I really wanted to spotlight it because I thought it was such a neat observation. So I just cut out another piece of paper and drew the drawing on it. And then I stuck it down with a glue stick. And that's kind of often how I work. It's fairly spontaneous. And this again is not a final draft. It's a demo for somebody. And then I labeled it we saw a lot of nest carries, and they're nesting in sycamores, which the teacher I was doing this for says, oh, I know the botanical name of that, so that's what we got. So I thought that was pretty nice. The other thing that you might notice about this drawing in particular is I haven't done much to it. It was black and blue outlines, just with a Sharpie, and then I added the little gold feet and this gold nose patch. And just the little spot colors make it look so much more cohesive. It's much easier to read the drawing with those spot colors in it. And you'll notice I did that too here. And then in the final one, you don't see it as much actually. That's too bad. Here. But it's nice to have those because it helps you identify where the birds are in the drawing, because it's a pretty busy drawing. So that's one way to do a nature story. I mean, I guess this nature story I would call, egrets building nests. Because to me it's important that something is happening in a nature story, not that it's a beautiful portrait of an egret, but it's showing what's going on in that habitat, and it's telling the story of what's happening in nature. And this is actually applicable to any painting or drawing you do or any illustration you do. It's like, what are you trying to tell somebody? What are you trying to convey? Why is it important to you, and why is there a story? So when you're thinking about a nature story of your own, think about not just I saw this bird, but I saw this bird building a nest, or I saw this bird raiding another bird's nest, or here's how a monarch butterfly comes to be. All these fun ideas are out there. There's endless ideas. And so what today's lesson actually is, and this is where you're going to have to sort of get your paper out, because I will share my screen. Today's lesson is actually about how to combine sources and how to sketch from life. And believe it or not, we're going to sketch from life, which is an odd idea. But I did some sketches of spotted towies in my garden, and I did one of a California thrasher. So these are interesting birds. So my nature story that I settled on to sort of use as a teaching vehicle for this class is this idea that I had an arborist bring me about 6 yards of these wood chips, and he put them in my garden, or I put them in my garden. He put them on my driveway. Took me forever. And I mulched my entire garden with about 4 or 5 inches of wood chip mulch. It was free except for the labor, and it has done wonders for my garden in many ways. So my story is going to be, how did the wood chips change the bird populations in my garden? Like, what happened in my garden as a result of the wood chips? And I think it'll be pretty fun. So when you're thinking about a nature story, you need to think about all the different references you could pull into your field. So this is where I'm going to start sharing my screen again. So here are the drawings I made, and now I'm going to share the screen with you. And I want to share this one. Okay. So let me put that away for now, and let me make this smaller if I can. Let's see, spotted towie, all about birds. So I went to allaboutbirds.org, which is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. They're kind of the big bird research lab. They're marvelous people. And they've made this really wonderful interactive website with lots of videos and photos. So what happened when I added the 6 yards of mulch to my garden is this bird appeared in my garden for the first time ever. Never seen this bird in my garden before, and now I have a nesting pair. So I kind of wanted to look into, how did the mulch change my garden in such a way that it got this bird to come? Now this might be not causation but causality, but we're going to assume that the bird likes my garden better than it used to. So one thing I can do is actually look here, and this is where you can pick up your pencil and do a little bit of a drawing. Let me pull up some paper. And I thought kind of lesson 1 would be how to draw something like this really fast. Let me take this away. And I'm going to start using a lot of paper, so I'm going to put it somewhere down here. Because essentially one of the skills you can develop over the next week is to draw things that move. It can be your pets, it can be the birds out at the rookery, the birds in your garden. You can sit at the edge of your curb and draw the people walking by, whatever is wiggling a little bit. I know that when you teach kids to field draw things that wiggle, you get a whole bunch of snails from the garden and you put them in a pan, and they have such a good time with that. So anything that wiggles will do. But just for starters, this is sort of something I've been teaching people lately, and I find that some people have never seen it before. So if this is boring, tell me. But one way to start a drawing is to look at the sort of basic shapes. So I'm going to draw them darker than you need to. This would be a great place for you to use your 2H or 4H pencil, because these dark lines are going to get me. Notice that I don't go like this and like this. What I do is sort of like look at what I'm drawing and make adjustments as I draw. So all I'm doing is looking for the big shapes in this bird. And there are some sort of basic shapes you look for: circles, ovals, rectangles. And you try and build the bird out of these simple shapes. Like here's a rectangle, but it's a little modified. It's actually a trapezoid. Maybe I should be drawing with a darker pen. So here are the basic shapes. And there are some sort of basic shapes you look for: circles, ovals, rectangles. And you try and build the bird out of these simple shapes. Here's a rectangle, but it's a little modified. It's actually a trapezoid. Maybe I should be drawing with a darker pen. So here are the basic shapes. So what I'm looking at now, having done the drawing, is what I would call contours, or the outside edges of the drawing. So I'm looking at the bird's beautiful markings and its beak, and my sort of big basic shapes have guided my drawing so far. And something I love about these birds is they have this bright red eye. And notice that when I find that I've made a mistake, I just fix it. I don't fuss it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to worry too much about that kind of thing. So here's its nice gold rufous side, whatever you call that, rusty colored side, and other leg. And then there's this little sort of divot back here where the tail attaches. And then notice I drew this wrong. If I look at the tail exactly, it's more shaped like that. So this sort of two-pass effect is really helpful. And this bird is called a spotted taily because it has all these bright white and black markings. So there's my little bird, just drawn from life with basic shapes. What I call shape drawing. If you have children who need something to do, I've noticed that kids understand and love this very quickly. So they really like doing it.
And
Yep.
can you tell us what the colors are again of the actual bird?
Yeah. So black, kind of a rusty color. I can actually color them in. Let's see. I think that the rufous sides would be
And would you put a wash in the back, like for the
Oh,
sky or foliage?
sure.
And how would you do that?
Well, I might actually, like, in my original, this is a leaf, and this is a leaf, and this is a leaf. Like in the original drawing, I think it would actually look at the drawing and think about where this bird spends its time. Because they love these sort of cramped, bushy places, so I might want to show that. So just put a whole bunch of leaves in it. But again, this is the kind of thing I would do from life. And then something you can do is, with those lines there, you can just do something like this and sort of show that it likes to be in the foliage. That's a really good question. And then something you can do, and something a science illustrator would do, is put where you observed it, or if you're using All About Birds to as your source material, then you would cite the picture that you used. The other thing you could do to make it even more fun, I don't have my pencils in order and I keep putting them places. I'm looking for a sky one. Is use a brighter color for the sky. Or just for the background. Like that. Here's a blue. And you can also just use a blue. That's a really dark blue. I don't like this. I think I would go more carefully like this. I don't like the scribble so much. But sort of the more you put in, as long as you keep it simple and consistent, it will help you. And notice that even though I put all those really heavy lines on in the beginning, they're not really informing the drawing very much now. Actually have various other things I could use, but something you can do either with this or with a better tool, which is probably a white pen, is you could give him back a little bit of space, because he got kind of laid in, like that background sort of impinged on his face, and I think he's going to look better with a little bit of space. So something that artists do all the time, and especially illustrators do, is they think about what will tell the information I wish to convey more clearly. So for me, I'm making this decision like, wow, that background came right up to him and sort of wiped him out. And now I can't see him so well. So I'm going to give him back that little bit of space he had before. And see how he kind of stands out a little bit? So I wanted to show you a couple other things I found in my research, because I was actually like, what's going on here? Is it possible that the Towie only appeared because I added duff to my garden? So if I wanted to truly illustrate this story, this would probably be the piece on the final, this would be an element on the final drawing. And this is what I would call sort of the hero element. It's a portrait, right? But if we were to make a real drawing, something you can start thinking of in the very beginning of this, and we'll talk about this more, I think, in week 3, is like, how is your final artwork going to be laid out? So in my final artwork, I would like to have my hero, probably some of the duff I added, or the story about the duff, like how he got there and what's it doing. And actually, I went into my garden and I got some duff. So I might actually draw some pieces of the duff to show what was added. So I'd probably add a little bit of the duff, oddly enough. And maybe a little picture of the tree guy with his gigantic truck dumping duff in my front yard. Six yards of it. And then I also, when I was asking the question, is it possible that when you add a lot of mulch to your garden, you get a different bird set? So I actually went and did some scientific reading and read some primary literature about what adding mulch to your garden can do. So I have some sources and articles to read, and if I find something in them that would help me to tell the story, I will include it in the story. So I would want my hero. Here's my hero. And then science research. I'd probably want what his partner, I'd want the big, beautiful markings bird. But I also have this lovely drawing of the female, and she's been out and gotten this big old mouthful of goodies for the kids. And she's taking them to the nest. Something that's kind of cool is even if you have a little tiny drawing with a little bit of color, it all of a sudden takes a lot of form. So there's that one. So I would probably put the picture of her in as well, equally heroic. Anybody who wants to build a nest and bring it to fledging is heroic. Birds do it a couple times each season. So here's our guy, and he's singing "Drink Your Tea." His partner is here with the mouthful of birds, bugs. Drink your tea. Here she is with all of her bugs, spider legs hanging out, kind of thing. So maybe the two of them together, and then little pictures of the duff and everything I added. It was a coast live oak tree, which might be important, so I'm going to add that it was a coast live oak tree. Which means I also have baby oaks coming up everywhere, because there were some acorns in it. So some pictures of what I got with my duff. And then I also think there would be a really great opportunity to essentially do a little sort of inset drawing of what I did to my garden to make this happen. So say this is the soil level, and I could actually do an A and a B. So this was condition A, right? I had a few plants and some weeds and bare soil. Then I had mulch, and I planted some natives to go on top of it. So bigger plants. And then what you actually can see in the soil if you take a sample is this soil has very few bugs in it, or earthworms. Whereas this soil is just like writhing with earthworms and bugs. So you could actually show how the mulch adding influenced the ground below the soil level, which would be kind of cool. Do a little citizen science on it. So in a sense, this could be an activist drawing, right? I could have a message. I could say, my message is mulch your yard. This is what happens. Which is kind of neat. So my final artwork might look a little bit like this, right? However, the layout is terrible and there are lots of conflicts. So, I don't know if you guys have this, but you can also just do some rapid iteration on your drawings. Where you just have a piece of tracing paper. And say I put him, let's put him over here. So he's a little bit farther over. And right here I'm going to put the truck. And the mulch. and the wheelbarrow. There was a lot of wheelbarrowing. Something like that. And then maybe she's gonna go. I actually think she would be better if she was facing the other way, because then they're sort of interacting. So here I'm just sort of composing on the fly. So now my drawing looks like this. See how I've changed some of the elements to make it kind of just flow better? And then down here I now have room to do soil profiles. So soil with mulch and without mulch. So it's getting there. And then up here would be essentially a text box that tells the story in some text. Who this is, where I observed them, what happened, that kind of thing. You could also do a little inset and show what a spotted towhee nest looks like and where it is. It's right on the ground. Like that. So that might be pretty close to what the final layout will be. This is sort of interesting because you'll notice that for this one, no, that's the wrong page. For this one, I did the layout, but I did it during class. I did it on the fly. So while the kids were watching, I was like, oh wait, I want to add this drawing. And I drew the drawing on a piece of paper, I cut it out, and I pasted it down. So that kind of thing can be really helpful. You can plan carefully, or it can be a collage. Or you can do both. All right. I think that is that. So as you're drawing, what we're going to do over the next couple weeks is find the resources you need to make some drawings, to go out into nature and draw, and bring the drawings back, and then refer to stuff you find on All About Birds or in any of your bird books or nature books or the internet. It's all good stuff. And combine those sources to make up something that tells a story. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So do you guys want to try this idea? I thought what we could do is I'll put the videos on of some birds bouncing around, and you can try your hand at drawing them live. How does that sound? And then I'll turn them off and I'll show you what I did while you were drawing. Keep in mind, just while we're still here, look for these kinds of shapes.
And would we use our pencil at this point, or just with pen because we're just doing it fast and not
Well,
doing
I find that you're going to be drawing so fast you don't really need to erase anything. However,
Right.
if you were to draw with a light pencil, like this, I'll just do it with my hand, right? You can kind of see how, each shape gets assigned and I use a lot of different lines. And then what I would do with this after I'd done this kind of a sketch in 5 seconds or less is I would look carefully at my hand again and start drawing it as it really is, without undo or without reference. Just like looking at my hand again and drawing it as it actually is. So the shape sketching, I guess, the shape drawing is sort of a preliminary to this contour drawing. So the shape drawing assures that all the contours end up in sort of the right place. And the contour drawing is sort of what I would call a final draft. I've drawn my hand a lot. I did it instead of learning math, which I still regret.
I'm so distracted. I'm looking out the window, and the the woodpeckers are just flying by.
So there's your nature story right there. You have all these woodpeckers.
know.
What kind are they? Are they acorn woodpeckers?
They're acorn, yeah. And we had one that unfortunately was being chased by a scrub jay, and it flew into the window and
no.
died. And I saved it
Oh,
to
wonderful.
draw it.
Oh,
much
okay.
to my husband's dismay.
Well, there you have a really nice nature story. You can either tell the story of the poor woodpecker's death, or you
Yeah.
could tell the story of what are woodpeckers like in their nesting habits or their foraging habits or whatever.
Yeah.
So something that's kind of magic about this technique is I used these shapes to draw, and then I drew the contour. And then when you erase all those scribbly lines, it really looks like you know what you're doing. It's pretty lovely to just like clean off the scribbly lines. Now I'm using a much darker pencil than you need to. If you do it with the 4H or the 2H, it's easier to erase the lines. So something I should just tell you about H pencils, if you don't know this, I'm just going to go over this quick. If you press with them, you will engrave the paper. And then no amount of erasing is going to get rid of that mark. You'll get rid of the mark, but look what happens when you want to shade it. It's still there. And you can feel that your pencil catches in the grooves of the paper you've made. So when you're using a 2H or a 4H, it should have this kind of a feel, this sort of running, fast, loose, just floating on the surface of the paper. You don't want to engrave it. Unless you really want to. Unless you have some purpose for the engraving. I can never spell when I'm drawing and talking. Something that can be kind of neat, I don't know if you guys will be able to see this, but you can usually pull a white line print of whatever it is you've drawn with a blunt pencil. So, just don't engrave your paper, you'll be fine. The marks will come up really easily. And that's pretty much what a really light graphite pencil is for that sort of pre-sketching, pre-drawing. This one is much too big. There you go. So if you guys want, I'll put...
And how do you,
What?
oh,
Go ahead.
I just have a question about, you're so good at giving it depth, or, you know what I mean? I feel like my drawings are all flat.
Oh, are they flat because you're not shading them, or are they flat because you're not changing the line?
Probably not shading.
Yeah. Well, this is a flat drawing, right? There's no shading. It's just
No,
a
but I
line.
can see that you have a hand and it's up. Like, if
Oh.
I drew that, it would be, it's flat. There's no depth,
Yeah.
flat.
If you watch my very first spring drawing class, I talk a lot about how to show depth with line. But essentially, we'll just do it really quick here. Here's my favorite little drawing about this question. Okay, A and B. Which is in front here?
A,
Yeah, which is in front here?
B, I guess.
And this one?
A.
It's a
You're on the
twist.
same plane.
It's a pretzel. So the reason for this is that this line comes in front of this one and blocks it off. And we read that as depth. We read that as this being behind that. It also helps to have that little white space. And that is why, with my Towie drawing, too many pieces of paper running here. With my Towie drawing, I put that little white rim around him. Okay. Towie drawing is gone, Rooney. I hear you. See how with the white rim around him, he looks like he's in front of the sky? And if I were to bring the sky right up to him, you all of a sudden have to settle that for yourself. See how he stands out from his background with that little white rim? That brings him forward. And that's the same technique I'm using here. when I leave this little spot right there. Something that's kind of neat, let me just draw it bigger, is if you draw a circle like this, and then you draw a circle with a lighter line, your brain will tell you just from those two simple lines that one is in front of the other. Right? So that's kind of how an intro to how you show depth with line is you make lines disappear behind each other and you leave this little gap. If you want it to look really far away, you make it even lighter or smaller. We also do tend to decide that things that are farther away but are the same shape are farther away rather than that they are smaller. This is something I go into a lot in a previous lecture, but I realize the lecture quality recording is bad, so we can go over it again if you want. Maybe we'll talk about it on Google Classroom, or we'll talk about it again next week.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the recordings are not very fun to watch because I'm essentially teaching myself how to be an audio-visual person, and I have no previous training in it. So let's see. I had a lesson plan, and now I'm trying to find where I was on it. So what are our next steps?
So we're going to look at the videos.
Oh yeah, let's do a quick look of the videos. I was just trying to remember where I was. Okay, I got to share my screen again. Share screen. Okay. Now I'm screen sharing. So here's a video, and I'm just going to loop it a couple times. You don't have to watch me draw, and then I'll show you what I did at the end. But I'm just going to sit here and have it loop a few times, and you see if you can draw her. So your pencil should be moving really fast right now. All right. So here's what I drew. And something that's kind of neat, these are called spotted towhees because of the bright white and black markings on their wings. They used to be called rufous-sided towhees, and I don't know why they changed the name, but they did. They were probably splitting up a population that they had decided was actually two different species, which is usually why that kind of thing happens. Here's his little eye. So I did 3 little sketches in the course of that session, where I had some fun, like looking at him from all the different angles. So all of these can be used when this kind of field sketching is so useful because they're so real. You really looked at something and how it moves and what it did. So it's actually kind of a nice thing to do. And I wanted to show its pretty wing markings, so I did a couple drawings of it from behind. And I would have to go back and look at the pattern of spots in order to get them right. Which is something I can do anytime because I have a bird book or the internet. So here's my bird book, and you can tell this book is old because it says rufous-sided towhee, which is not its name anymore. But these spots are very, very indicative of the species, so that's why it got called spotted towhee. So you could use whatever you've got to add detail that's actually true to your drawing. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but if you have an Apple phone or an Android phone, you can take a picture of anything, and inside the phone there's something, on my phone it's called Google Lens, and you can take a picture of something and then ask Google to go search for a similar picture on the internet, and it usually shows you the right thing. It's quite remarkable. So if you just want to quick ID something, you just take its picture without a lot of other stuff in it and ask Google to go find it for you. And it usually gets it right.
Is that an app?
No, it's actually built into your phone now. It used to be an app, but it was popular enough that everybody loved it enough that it's now just part of the phone.
Huh.
Yeah, it's super useful. I do it for plants. Like if I'm at the nursery and I want to know something more about a plant, I just take its picture. I do it for bugs.
Does it work for iPhone?
Yeah, iPhone has a similar feature. But I don't have an iPhone, so I can't tell you over the phone how to use it. 'Cause I don't have one. But I do know that it's got a very similar function. And it's probably in the same spot inside your camera.
So once you take the picture, how do you ask Google to identify it?
Well, I'm using my camera as a camera, or my phone as a camera, but what you do is you highlight that picture so you see only that picture. And then at the bottom, there's a little like lens icon. And if you tap on the lens icon, it does its search magic. You can play with this. If you search for Google Lens in Google, it'll tell you how to use it. And I do know that iPhones have a similar thing.
Thank you.
So it's called Google Lens if you want to search it up.
Google Lens.
Something that's kind of fun is to do is to take one of your drawings and see if it thinks it's a Towie. If it can identify it. I find that kind of thing very fun, but I don't feel weird that way. So once again, you have the kind of opportunity for the magic, once you've done a drawing, to erase all your yucky lines and just make it look like you know what you're doing. You really can't do this if you're working on a very light paper. There are some things you can't do it, but sometimes you can. This is where I miss my Posca pens, because I would just use a Posca pen. Does anybody have, it's not really my idea that you will copy my story. You're welcome to if you just are here to draw along and have an hour of art time a week. You can. But if you have ideas for art stories, you might want to share it in the chat or in the Google Classroom. And you can post what sources you're going to use. You can post sketches you make, whatever you like. You can ask for advice. You can send me things in Google Classroom privately if you are shy about sharing them publicly, or you can share things with the class. It's your choice. You get to decide what you want to do with that. Do you have any questions at this point? Everybody's happily drawing. It's really cute. Please log in to my Google Classroom. The login code is SP26DRM, Sierra, Papa, number 2, number 6, Delta, Radio, Mike. Thank you for joining Anne's Art Desk. These videos are brought to you by the City of Palo Alto and the Palo Alto Art Center Foundation.